to talk to you about today is our functional learning strategy, but to understand it, you have to understand a little bit about our business strategy. I'm going to apologize for using a handheld. There is nowhere to attach the wireless mic, so I'm going to do this a little double-fisted today. So, at GE, we are always about reinventing, and that is very, very true in terms of our most current business strategy. Some people are seeing some of our ads and our videos, the commercials, and they think it's a rebranding effort. It is not a rebranding effort. This is a completely new business strategy. We have traditionally been a company that has been a financial services company and an industrial company. Many of you may know that we've divested much of our financial services. We do have a little bit of GE Capital left, but we are now combining our digital or our industrial businesses with digital so that we can provide much more value to our customers. From digitizing all of the data, we have thousands of pieces of equipment all around the world in many different companies. So we are primed for capturing data and using that data to benefit both ourselves and our customers. So we are truly becoming a digital industrial company. Many of the actions that we've taken to become this company, we've been executing over the last year. So in 1 year alone, we have made several acquisitions. We're in the process of acquiring Baker Hughes, where we will be merging our oil and gas business with them. We've made several other acquisitions that you may not even know the names of the companies, but it's all to build up our capability in this particular space. We also, 2 years ago, we acquired a company called Alstom from France. It added 65,000 employees to our company. So in the span of 2 years, we added that. We're adding all of this, and we're doing everything on the right-hand side. I've already mentioned GE Capital. We sold our appliances business. We are in the process of trying to sell our water business, and we are going to be selling our industrial solutions business. So in about a 2-year span, huge change, transformation of the company into a brand new company like nothing we've ever seen in GE's 125-year history. We just celebrated our 125th anniversary last week, so it's pretty exciting, and a very exciting time to be at GE as well. So I want to talk a little bit about store. So we are all looking at all the different parts of GE in order to learn from them and leverage and combine things to bring more value to our customers. And we're also giving that across the GE store. And we do it with everything that we do, including all of the learning. And I'll show you a little bit more about how we've advanced more in that space in the past couple of years. We're also undergoing a cultural transformation in order to enable this business transformation. And that cultural transformation is made up of 3 areas: our GE beliefs, FastWorks, and performance development. So let's talk about FastWorks. This is the way in which we work. If you are familiar at all with the software world and the way of working agile, it's very similar. And I'll contrast what it's been like at GE in the history and what we're changing to. In the past, what we would do is we would work on a product for however long it took to make that product absolutely perfect before we rolled it out. By the time we rolled it out, we may have become disconnected with what the customers really even need, may not have even been meeting their needs by the time it got rolled out, or it may not even be appropriate in the industry or the market anymore. So we've implemented a whole new process of how do we co-create, how do we co-develop with our customers, and how do we do that in a very fast and agile way? So how do we create something that we can really quickly and easily test with little cost and very little time, and we iterate as we go? It also helps to prevent that situation where you've sunk so much money into something that you don't want to stop doing it, so you keep doing it whether it's the right thing to do or not. So we don't do that anymore. And we also do this internally. So everything that we do, and I talked about Brilliant You yesterday, for those of you who heard it, we use this exact same approach. We tested things, we got lots of user experience, we did it a little bit at a time, so that by the time we got to this great product, it was done with everybody being involved in it and giving that feedback. So this is not easy to do. It sounds easy, but it's not. And we still run into, I still encounter people who want to test something, but what they want to do is they want to create a full, experience, and then let's test it with this group. I'm like, no. By the time you've done that, we don't have time to make modifications to it. So we're constantly having to challenge ourselves to learn to work in this new way. So the next piece to this is the GE beliefs, and this is the way that we act and lead. And we have 5 GE beliefs, and they are part of our performance development process as well, in terms of the expectation is that this is the way that you will act and that you will lead. Some folks have already asked me about the GE beliefs and what they are, so I can give you an example. There's 5 of them. So they're things like stay lean to go fast, empower and inspire each other, deliver results in an uncertain world. So those are the types of things that we're talking about. What we have done is at different levels in the company, we have said a little bit more specifically, here's what that looks like. If you're doing these things, you are demonstrating that. If you're not, you're not. And then finally, performance development, the way that we develop ourselves. And many of you are talking about either having done away with ratings or beginning to think about that. So what we have done is we did away from our old performance management process. We have a new performance development process. This performance development process does not have ratings, so we've done away with ratings. What we do is it's all about the dialogue. So at the beginning of the year, we create priorities, not goals. Because we know things change so fast, if you set a goal, people feel like they have to achieve that goal, whether it's the right goal or not anymore. So we have priorities, and those priorities can be revisited and changed over time as needed. Then we have touch points that are frequently throughout the year, and then at the end of the year we do a year-end summary where we just talk about here's how the year went, here's what you learned, here's what we want to work on for the next year, etc. And then throughout the year we give insights. Continue insights are, I saw you do this really well, keep doing it because that's really helpful to us. Consider insights are, I saw you do this, consider doing it a different way next time, and it's up to you to own it and decide if you want to do that or not. And we can give insights upwards, around, or down. That is unique and really different in the GE culture because it typically was only manager to employee. It was never 360 in terms of insights. And this process is enabled by technology. So we actually have an app. It started on the laptops, and then we made it mobile into an app. So at any point in time, I can go on my iPhone or my iPad. I can send an insight to anybody in the company. I can view any of the insights. I get a little alert if I get an insight sent to me. And then it just enables the process and the discussions as we go along. So it's a huge cultural shift. The other thing I'll mention is that we used the FastWorks process to develop this. So we did little tests of different pieces of it. My team was actually part of the very first test 2 years ago. So we've been in it since the very beginning. And so we've given lots of insights back to the process. Here's how it's working, here's how it's not working. We were the first ones to go through no ratings. I had to give input on could you differentiate when it came to compensation discussions? Did you have a hard time doing that without having ratings? So I've been very involved in the development just because I've been asked to be part of the different tests that we go along. But we even did it such that we had, 1,000 people test it with no ratings, 1,000 people tested it with ratings, 1,000 people tested it with a different kind of rating. So we did big tests, although it was small in the GE world because we have 300,000 employees. But we had the luxury of getting a lot of great data to help build this over time. So it took 2 years to get to the final product in terms of what it looks like today. And then we gradually rolled out each capability piece of it as we tested it and got lots of learnings from it. So I love it. It's great. So anybody who's thinking about that, if you want to touch base with me, I can certainly share experiences, and I can connect you with our team who works on this full time if that would be helpful to you as well. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about learning and how that supports our business strategy. At GE, we feel really strongly that 80% of what you learn is by your experiences on the job, special projects, all that kind of thing, 20% in formal learning situations. Crotonville, some of you have heard of, some of you have not heard of. Crotonville is our corporate learning organization. The name came from our main campus is at Croton-on-the-Hudson in New York, so it got a nickname of Crotonville. The one historical legacy that we've had to overcome is that Crotonville is not a place. It is an ideal. So we've been shifting that over the last 2 years as well. Some of you who were here last night heard the turnover numbers, the numbers of new people. So we had to figure out a way to reach more people, and that meant we need to take Crotonville to you. We cannot just rely on Crotonville being one place. So our mission as Crotonville is to inspire, develop, and connect the leaders of GE for today and the future. Everything that we do, we are constantly coming back to that mission, even to how is our learning constructed and designed. What are we doing to inspire in that learning? What are we doing to connect people in that learning? So it feeds right into everything that we do. You'll see a little bit about the numbers of people that we actually train now through Crotonville. That does not mean that they physically go to that main campus, because we could never train that many people just doing that. So that tells you already that we are reaching thousands of people through what we do. And then I talked about Brilliant You last night. Some of you wanted to know a little bit about what it looks like. This header down here is on our home page, so you can see a little bit about what it looks like here. Some of you were asking me about that, and I have another page a little bit later. But you'll see there's lots of different ways to navigate through it. If you were to drop down on collections, what you would see is groupings of different learnings and courses that people have asked us to put together. Academies is the functional learning, and you'll see each of the functional academies, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about that more. You'll even see, like next to podcasts, you'll see beta, because that's in the testing process, and we're getting a lot of input and feedback from people. So what we do is we just put things out there, and we start asking people for feedback, and we don't make formal launches, we just build it over time. All right, so let's talk about functional learning. So up until 2 years ago, we only did functional learning in a very small way at corporate. Any functional learning that was delivered across the company before then, most of it was done by the different GE businesses in whatever way or form or fashion that they wanted to. We historically have done a lot of finance training out of corporate because we've been a very heavily financed company. And we had done some sales and marketing, but to a really limited degree. So we made a decision 2 years ago that in order to support this new business strategy, the functional training becomes so much more important, and we need to put a much bigger focus on it. And oh, by the way, we don't need 10 different GE businesses trying to figure this out, using all the resources, et cetera, and then you have inconsistencies and all that kind of thing. So over the past 2 years, we have built up a team and a strategy around how we deliver this. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit. What you see here is the team that we've built up. Everyone in these roles is new to their roles in the last 2 years. You do not see IT here, and the reason for that is because we did build the IT learning strategy, and then we moved it over to our digital IT specific business so that they could take it and grow it even further to what they needed to do. And we have a lot of experts there. I am by no means an IT expert, so it was time to move it over to the people who could take it to that next level. What you see is the other ones. Now what's interesting is, for example, global supply chain, we've honestly never really delivered much global supply chain training at all in the company. You know, one of the first things we did was start to look at what are we doing around the company. The answer was not much. And we have probably 50,000 employees in the professional level of global supply chain, and we have another 100,000 people in manufacturing plants. And what are we doing to build their skills? If we're going to convert our factories to brilliant factories where they are digitized, we need to upskill these folks to be able to design and run a factory that looks very different than what the factories have looked previous to now. So you'll even start to see in the public realm some announcements about Brilliant Learning that we're rolling out just to support the manufacturing facilities. And it's gotten a lot of press in the U.S. because of the fact that we are helping to upskill that manufacturing workforce as well. So let me tell you a little bit philosophically about how we've gone about the learning strategy for the functions. The first is we did centralize it in corporate HR as opposed to having it around the businesses. Secondly is we focus on all the skill sets that need to be used in every business. If there is business-specific training that needs to be done, the business is still on that. And I'll give you an example. For selling, all of our salespeople need to know how to sell outcomes and solutions, but they don't all need to know how an ultrasound works. So the healthcare business will take care of training them on how does an ultrasound work. So really product training, regulatory training, industry information will be handled by the businesses. All of those other core skill sets will be handled by our team. The next piece is that the way we decide what training to design, develop, and deliver is driven by the functional strategy. So we work very closely with the functional leadership teams for each of these functions to decide what are the capabilities that we need to develop and what are we going to prioritize. We have a very lean team. You see the team right there. There's one person for sales and marketing. There's one person for engineering. We do leverage some of our other Crotonville counterparts to help support some of that, and we do a fair amount of outsourcing of design and delivery. But we cannot be everything to everybody, and we can't develop every last little thing that might be needed. So we're very conscious about what we focus on, and we very specifically prioritize what we're going to work on. The next piece that helps to drive that prioritization is critical audiences. If I've got 100 people here that need to know how to do this, but I've got 2,000 people over here, I'm going to focus on the 2,000. And it's just the way that we do. And we absolutely recognize we can't do everything for everybody, but we have to say no in order to be able to focus on what's the most important thing for this year. We are really focused on providing training globally, and this is not something that we had done a good job of in the past. So what you will see is a really significant focus that training is available all around the world. It is not US-centric. And an increase in virtual offerings. The other thing is we started taking trainers to them, but what people said was, look, we want more people. You can't get to us fast enough. We want more people to be able to go through the training. So what can you do to help provide it to us virtually? And we've got people in all parts of the world, so it's really hard to get around to where everyone is. I have no budget. The way we do this is we charge tuition to the participants, and I have to 100% liquidate everything we do, including the cost of this team. So that's a very interesting model because I may spend money at the beginning of the year, but I have to make sure I recoup it by the end of the year. If I don't, I've not made my budget, and it gets my compensation is affected because of it. So this has been a huge learning for this team. They've been used to being given a budget and saying, okay, you have this much to spend this year. Well, now they really own a P&L, and they have to make sure that they're picking the right things to do that people are willing to pay for, and that there is enough value in that experience that they're willing to pay that much money for it. So it's a pretty interesting model, and it's very challenging, but I think it adds an element of development for this team that they may not have gotten otherwise in a learning role. Okay, and then finally, we were not integrated with Crotonville, which is our traditional leadership learning organization. So we have now fully integrated with Crotonville. We report into Crotonville. We use the learning coordination processes. We all use the same LMS. We use all the same branding in terms of what we do. All of our participant materials look the same. We digitize everything together. But that's been quite an interesting process to make sure that we are leveraging all of that. And what we do and the needs we have in the functional learning can sometimes be different than the leadership learning. So it's been a learning curve for everyone along the way. All right, so what I thought I would do is show you one particular function's learning strategy so that you could see how that's been built over the past couple of years. And I'm going to take my time. Okay, we're good. So commercial is one of the ones we had done a little bit of training at corporate, there was also training happening in the businesses. So it was a very interesting one to take over. And so what I thought I would do is share with you a little bit about the before and the after and then how we've gotten there. So first of all, on the curriculum, there was very little cross-business sharing. So one business didn't know what another business might have been doing from a learning perspective. No common design based on capabilities. It was literally, well, I think we just need this, and I think we need that. And it was all over the place. Content was outdated, old. It wasn't contemporary with what it needed to be. You might have multiple courses of the same course, even within the same GE business. And no easy way to scale new content because it was strictly classroom, and it wasn't even set up in such a way that you could scale it very big. From a community standpoint, you did have sales training leaders in these different businesses, but there was no community. They didn't know who they were. The sales leaders weren't interacting with the sales training people. So it was very much of a silo in terms of that experience. And then finally, no new commercial learning content, no contemporary design approaches. Like I said, it was very classroom specific. So we started with a very early vision of we want to have a GE commercial academy that rivals the best companies' commercial academies. And when we say commercial, we mean sales and marketing. And we want to be thought of as best in class. And 3 years ago, we absolutely were not thought of as best in class when it comes to our commercial learning. We wanted to have an executive learning council and a learning leader council of these people that were all out in the businesses. And certainly they weren't going away right away, so we felt like it was really important that we include them in this process. And then that we really focus on the best and the future capabilities that we need in this space. So here's what the Commercial Academy vision started to shape up as. And what you'll see is that we have three components. On the left, we have Crotonville Commercial. So this is this new stuff we're going to create. And we're going to make that available across the businesses for all the businesses. It's going to be really premium level. It's going to be multiple capabilities, cross-business, participation, available globally, experiential in nature, etc. But we also knew that there were a lot of great courses out there already happening, but we had to go through a process to rationalize that. So I'll give you an example. There were 10 negotiation skills courses. So we needed to look at those 10. What's the best one of that 10? And we worked with all the businesses. Everybody contributed. Everybody looked at all the different courses, rated them. And it was interesting because people were pretty quickly willing to give up on theirs when they saw something that was better. The other thing that we could do then is we could also negotiate better with the vendors because we had more volume going to one particular course or one particular vendor. So those have become our GE preferred courses. And then finally, the businesses are still going to have some business-specific training. And in some cases, some businesses have some similarities, so they may even want to share those back and forth. So we're enabling that process too. So this was the big vision. Now I want to give you a little bit of a sense of, we've enabled it with Brilliant U. So here's the Brilliant U page for commercial learning. So if you click on Academies, you will get to the Commercial Academy. And across the top are tabs, and we've divided it by the capabilities that you're trying to develop. And these are sort of at the highest level. And what you'll see is, if you could scroll down, you would see courses, you would see smart bit articles, you would see videos, you'd see lots of different offerings that tie up to that one. There was no way for anyone at GE to find out what was going on from a commercial learning perspective previous to this. And this includes all the GE preferred courses as well. And you can register for them from here as well. All right, so what has that story looked like? And I wanted to share this with you because my commercial learning leader has just done a phenomenal job of really thinking about how do we phase this over the past several years. We had phenomenal partnership with our commercial learning leaders and our HR leader. We meet with our HR leader for commercial for the company every 2 weeks. And we are digging into this and we're thinking through it together, and he's just been an incredible partner in this process as well. So across the top, you will see how we have measured this in terms of the tuition per person. Our goal has been to drive that tuition down. We've also had a goal of driving the amount of time out of the job.
And we have also had a goal of reaching more people outside of the US, and so you can see how that progression goes. And then we've also wanted to measure what was your experience in it. Would you recommend this to other people? So you'll see an NPS score. Now that's not the only data that we collect. We do collect quite a bit of other feedback so that if an NPS score is low, we can look at the other pieces of it to figure out where the issue was. So what we've done is we measure the NPS. We measure how contemporary is it. Are we using new design approaches? Are we using technology to enable a different kind of experience? So if you see 88% contemporary, that means 88% of what we're doing has some kind of contemporary element to it. And then finally, skills transfer. And this is where we're measuring, are you able to use this on the job, and are you using it on the job? So we picked these three to keep as sort of a dashboard as we go throughout the year and then from year to year. And then what you'll see below is how we've built on the content and the community pieces of this as we've gone through. So from a content perspective, you'll see we started out classroom only, no external view on commercial learning. You'll see the very first year, we really focused on selling outcomes because we're moving to a digital industrial business. You cannot just sell a product now. You have to sell what is the outcome that a company can get by using this particular product, and we're enhancing that with digital. And in some cases, that means you're selling software. So you've got people selling an aircraft engine that now have to sell software. So how do we help them understand that process? And then we also pulled sales and marketing folks together. We had them go through training together. They've been very siloed historically. So we said, let's try this from a learning perspective. We tested it, experimented with it. They loved it. And they've been able to now bring sales and marketing teams together to learning, and then they can go back and apply that in a way that they've never worked together before. So learning was really starting to help bring the functions together too. We implemented the communication, the community, and I will say we got some resistance. You know, people thought, well, you're getting ready to eliminate my job. You're getting ready to do all the stuff that I've gotten to do. So I will say this was a long, slow process. Our goal was not to eliminate their jobs. There is enough product and business-specific learning that still needs to happen that we just can't take on. But it doesn't make sense that all of us are doing negotiation skills training differently. That just doesn't make sense. So interestingly enough, they really finally came along, but we had to do a lot of stakeholder management and a lot of change management to get through that process. And I don't want to shortcut that. It was not easy. That was probably one of the toughest parts of this transformation. You'll see in 2016, a lot more focus on moving more to doing knowledge transfer prior to coming to the classroom, and then doing the real skill, action-based learning in the classroom. And we're starting to use some social learning formats as part of that process. And it's interesting, we have a high potential program that we tested an approach with. And we started before they came to the classroom. They had to get in this platform, they were put in groups, they had to do this work. They were supposed to come to the classroom prepared to jump right into customer discussions where we had senior leaders playing the customer. I would say 50% of them didn't do any of the pre-work. Well, you know what? They learned their lesson. Because they came in expecting, oh, they'll review everything, you know, I'll be fine without it. Mm-mm. They went right into customer discussions with senior leaders. And it showed that they had not done the work that they were supposed to do. And it was pretty interesting, the reaction. I mean, they were like, I'm ashamed. And we're like, you should be. And in the past, we would not have done this to them. We would have said, oh, they're probably not going to do it. Let's just make sure they're prepared. We didn't do it this time. So what we're doing now is, because this is a cohort that comes back together, they're in a high potential program, they now have work they're doing in between. They have a whole social learning platform where they're learning from each other, they're doing activities together, and next, which is every 6 months, they're going to be thrown right into another phase of the sales process where they're going to start demonstrating and practicing and learning, you know, what they're learning throughout this time. So we're testing that. It's working really well, so I think we're going to start expanding that concept even more to our greater sales population as well. And then what we're finding from a community perspective is, really up until last year, we were trying to push it. It's a pull now. I can't tell you how many parts of the business are calling us and saying, I want to bring this here, I want to do it in an intact team, I want to have a group together because I want them to learn together and do it together. And so it's great because now we know we're hitting the right stuff and we're getting, making sure that we're delivering on what they need. So 2017 really focused on how do we take it to the next level in terms of virtual. So we're doing some virtual instructor-led learning, specifically around how do you use social networks to increase your sales. And we're actually delivering that virtually and digitally. So that's quite interesting to see how that's working. And we're getting great participation throughout the process. And we're testing some things because we're struggling with, do you do an hour at a time? Will they come back the next time? Should you just do it sort of all in one day? So we're testing some of these different approaches to see what works and getting a lot of feedback from folks in terms of here's what works for our schedules and for us and our experience. And then the last thing I wanted to share with you is we're rolling out next week a sales excellence simulation, which is really almost like an assessment. So it's a process for them to go through. They make decisions, they select, here's the best way I should approach it, here's what I've picked up from all the research I've done on this company and testing it to see if they've got picked up on all the right things that are going to help them. It does provide them learning because when they get the right answers, they're learning from that, but it's not a course. And what it will do is highlight for them, look, you really struggled in this area, and here's some learning that could help you. And that learning that's going to help them is a variety of things. It might be courses, it might be videos, it might be all these different learning assets that we're pulling together to help support them. So they'll get a process of learning through this, but then they'll also get pointed to all of the right learning assets that will help them as they go on. The idea was this was going to be used with really junior salespeople, but we've had some more senior salespeople test it, and they're like, this is for everybody. I started going through it myself. It's really involved. I thought, oh, this will be easy. It's really involved. I mean, you got to really think about this stuff, and it's really helping you to understand, even when you just do research on a company, what are the right things to look for? Because you've got all this minutia, and how do you most quickly scan and get through to the right thing? So it's really interesting the way it's designed. My understanding is it takes about 3 hours to go through it completely, but you can stop and start. So I went through it the other day, exited, I'm going to go back to it, keep working my way through it, because it's really interesting, and I'm excited to see the uptake, in this. We're anticipating maybe about 1,000 people will go through it this year, but given that we have 25,000 sales employees, I'm hoping that we get an upside and that a lot of people go through it. And we are charging tuition to go through this. All right, I'm going to stop there. I think time-wise. Okay, we have about 10 minutes maybe for questions. Karen.
Thank you, Lisa. You talked about increasing skills transfer and measuring that, and I think the statistic you had was 75% to 97% in 3 years.
Yep.
How do you measure that?
So how we're measuring that is both the participants, we are asking them immediately, are you using the skills? Is this a skill you can use? We're then also going back to them later and saying how much of these skills have you found valuable and have you used? And not 100%, but in sample sizes, we're also going to their managers. What are you seeing them do differently? And do you see them applying the skill sets? Yeah. Yeah.
Leiza, great presentation.
Thank you.
Yesterday, Matthew Owenby described a really unique culture. And it's interesting, one of the things he said, how they're able to do that, is they don't acquire companies. Or very few. You'll have, because you're exiting appliances, other business, getting out of GE Capital more, you're losing a lot of folks and you're gaining a lot of their businesses. So your turnover might be 40% of employees in a couple of years.
Yes.
Are you part of trying to create the unique GE culture? And if so, how's that going?
Yeah, so I'm not personally part of the formal activities for that, and it's huge. It's one of the biggest concerns that we have. So we have a really strong compliance team that's constantly working on how do we get them educated? How do we bring them up to speed? How do we make sure that they understand it? But what I am personally part of is how do we make sure that in those learning experiences, we're embedding and weaving that through everything that we do and everything that we talk about in that learning, because a lot of these new people are going to be in our learning. Most of them will be in functional learning before they'll be in leadership learning. So you can imagine easily you'd put it in leadership learning. So in functional learning, we've got to weave that through as well. Sales is a great way to do it because you have to start to talk about it's not appropriate for you to talk with a competitor and agree on pricing. You know, so we weave some of that stuff in as much as we can to that learning because it's huge. It's huge.
So a lot of what you're doing is not necessarily talking about the GE way. You're exuding or showing it as an example through the process.
Trying to weave it in so that they're learning it without even realizing they're learning it, because we're not calling it compliance as we go through that process. Yeah, yeah.
Again, thank you for everything you're sharing. You, on one of the slides, you mentioned, or it shows average tuition and how it's going down. Just a really technical question. Is that per day, or how are you measuring 750 or whatever?
Yeah, it's per person for the course.
For a total course.
Mhm.
So that could be a 2-day course, could be a 1-week course.
Yes.
Could be the micro learning.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And it's not the little micro bits of learning. It's more of if there is a course that has a beginning and an end, that's what we charge tuition for. Yeah.
And a little more selfishly, as you're outsourcing and bringing in vendors, how are you integrating them into some of these systems? So if you've got a professor from Stanford who's got content but doesn't use this platform, or isn't bringing their own platform,
Right.
how's that process going forward?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The first challenge is getting vendors who are willing to engage in a different way of doing it. And our biggest challenge is some of the university professors, because they're just not really open to the change. And they're not comfortable with a different way of learning. So in some cases, we're looking for other solutions in that case. In other cases, we're involving them in the co-creation of it. And it's interesting, we've got one vendor right now, a finance vendor, that we're trying to create a MOOC for something that he's done in the classroom. And we want to videotape him delivering pieces of content, but then we're going to create activities. And this is so funny because the learning leader said to me, yeah, he only wants to charge us a day for this work. I said, he has no idea what this is going to take. I said, you need to go back to him and make sure he understands, because I said, our end product is not going to be the result of one day of work on his part. And I said, we need to make sure he really gets what this is going to be. So it's going to be a lot of education. I will say, for example, the sales excellence simulation, we worked with a vendor who really wanted to co-create it with us. And it's their platform. They said, we're wanting to do this anyway. Here's the platform that we found that we want to do it. And we've gone ahead and done that. As much as possible, we're trying to create internal platforms that we can use so we have a lot more flexibility. But in this case, we didn't want to wait. So we found a vendor who was open, wanted to start doing it, and we worked. So it's a variety of different ways, and honestly, we're doing a lot of experimenting. So we're going to experiment as quickly and as easily as we can, and we'll see what works.
Hey, Leiza, just to build off of the tuition question, so it sounds like turning your team into sort of owners of P&L is something new. Have you found that the expectation from the business, now that you're basically charging, is the expectation that much greater that you're able to demonstrate the value back to them? And if so, beyond those 3 measures of NPS, how contemporary was it? I'm guessing it's a self-rated skills transfer. What other ways are you helping to really demonstrate that value?
Yeah, so one of the reasons why our learning strategy is built on the business strategy is because of the fact that we know and we learn what's important to that commercial leader, so that we're really focused on that. So for example, outcome selling is huge. So what we've done is worked very closely with commercial leaders around the company in the development of it as well. So they're involved in looking at the content, helping to make sure that we're addressing the right skill sets, and then they're also really involved in seeing how are they immediately using this on the job. So it's really more working with them throughout the process so that they can see it and actually give that input. I will say at GE, doing an ROI on learning is not critical. It is so understood that learning is valuable that we don't have to prove it, but I can tell you we're going to hear pretty quickly if we're not hitting that mark. which is why I don't want the team taking 6 months to create something before anybody ever sees it. They should be involved in the whole development all along. And it's interesting, we tested something, and we decided to test it with no tuition. We had hardly any participation. The minute we put tuition on it, there was participation, and they completed it. Because I even said, why do you want to not charge a tuition for this test? Well, because I want to make sure we have people that will test it. Well, we learned that you need to put something on it, because then they see value in it.
You ever had a challenge where it's a tough business year, so budgets get really tight, and then all of a sudden your participation, your courses just go down?
So the question is, has there been a tough year where budgets are tight and participation drops? And the answer is absolutely yes. We saw a little bit of that in 2016. So what we ended up doing in that case was, where we saw low participation in something, we canceled it, we didn't hold it. And then there was some pull from other parts of the business, and so we were able to still keep whole from a budget perspective. 2017 is a really hard year. That is why it's even more critical this year that we are only focusing on the most critical things. And we did an exercise at the beginning of the year. We had a lot of plans, and then we were told, look, the businesses aren't going to be able to pay a lot, so we got to take a step back. And we said, what if we only had to do 3 things in this particular function, what would it be? And we've completely scaled it back to that. And we've also had more of a push for the virtual, smaller bits of learning that we can do a little bit over time and pay smaller chunks. So we're testing some things. But this year is really going to test us. It's a tough year.
Leiza,
Yes.
that was a fabulous case study of some great work that's happening.
Thank you. Thank you.